correlative to 1 Peter. Because in 1 Peter, it's so funny, it sounds almost opposite, but really it's kind of the same trend that Peter took. And that is in 1 Peter, if you remember, 1 Peter, we started out with getting a new worldview, changing our thinking about our world and our reason for living and how we respond to it, and what is true, what is truth, and how to apply that to our life. And Peter did it in the context of 1st and 2nd Peter, of how do we live, how do we change our thinking to live Christ-like in a world that rejects us, that rejects what we stand for, and therefore we suffer or we're persecuted or we're left out of the whole conversation. And we're sometimes made fun of, just sometimes ignored, sometimes belittled. And in their case, they were actually physically persecuted. How do we live in a way against hostility like that when we still reflect the life of Christ? Well, Peter had to completely change their thinking when it came to suffering, because our normal responses to suffering, our human responses to suffering, are exact opposites of what he said to do. Remember, he said, no, you do not retaliate, you do not get revenge, you do not try to protect yourself. You push into it and you embrace them and you love them even more as your enemy than you did before. Completely contrary to the way we would normally respond. And that was the whole, if you're going to suffer, let it be for doing good, not for evil. And that was different, that was a different mindset. And he started out 1 Peter by getting us there, by remembering who we are. Who are we? We are the people of God who have an eternal home. We have promises that are real and that are eternal, and that we have to stand in those. That's where our mindset has to change first, is recognizing what we've been given, who we are, and where we're going, and why we're here. And he started out 1 Peter with those very ideas. What's interesting about 1 Corinthians is that it's the same thing. Paul is trying to renew their minds, which is kind of what Tina talked about today in Romans 12, 1 and 2. Paul needed to transform their thinking into Christ-like thinking. Now listen to this opposite point here. Because these people are living in a world that they've embraced and has embraced them. It's not a world that rejects them. It's not a world that persecutes them. It's a world that says, we like you. Come on and be a part of us. And they have been their whole lives. But until the time they became believers, they were a functioning, active part of the world and all that it taught. So now the question is, now that we become believers, not how do we live against the hostility, but how do we live in the friendliness of it all? In the warm and fuzzy feelings that we get in the world. And that it's our everyday life and it's right there in our face. What do we do with that? Do you see the correlation? Whether it's persecution and we have to deal with enemies, or whether it's friendliness with the world, there is a battle, and our mind has to be changed about how we respond. There has to be a new worldview that we have that enables us to walk into whatever the scenario is, one or the other, and deal with it in a way that honors Christ. That's what Paul was going to teach them. But just like Peter, Paul has to bring them back first to the reality of what the gospel is to them, who they are in Christ, what they're trying to achieve, because they had critically distorted thinking about what that meant, because they had been so engaged with the world for so long. It had been their whole lifestyle for so long. So he's going to, in the first 4 chapters, he's going to deal with reminding them of who they are and who the world is and why they're here. And then he's going to go on with the rest of it, correcting some of the behavior that they had embraced or meshed right in with their Christian living. Thinking that this is the way we did it before, now we just blend it with the way we do it now in the Christian realm. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's what we've done, is we've blended. We've taken some of the Christian principles and said, well, we'll go this far, so we'll blend it with the world, and then we compromise whether we know it or not. And God has a problem with that. Because, he's called us to be holy. And what they were defining as holy, Paul was like astounded that they would define that. So, something tells me that if Paul came into our Christian society today, he would be flabbergasted that we call that Christian behavior. That we call this living in the world as a light. He would say, oh no, you're part of the darkness. You're part of the problem. But because we've kind of gotten used to blending it, just like the Corinthians did, we don't notice it. It's the frog in the kettle syndrome. So I want us to do, so the first thing we're going to do this week, you just got your lesson. So this week I'm just going to do like a buzzer of 1 Corinthians so that you see how it's broken down. And I wanted to start us off with those concepts. Remember, our goal for the next 16 chapters, which is 1 Corinthians, I think it's a little over 16 weeks because we have spring break or something in there. But, so what are we here for in 1 Corinthians? What are we going to learn in 1 Corinthians? Why does God bring you here in the mess that's out there? Why does he bring you here, and what is it he wants you to learn? What is it that he wants you to see? How does he want you to change? He wants you to be transformed instead of conformed. Right? That was the Romans 2 that she read. So how do we more specifically see that through 1 Corinthians? That's what we're looking for. I hope that by the time we're done with this book, we will all, number one, define sin differently. We will define the world differently. And we will define our part in it differently. Those are three things I want us to accomplish. In the same way that we did with 1 Peter. We defined suffering differently, didn't we? And our responses to suffering differently, and our response to the world differently. We want to change the way we think. That requires a new transformation of our mind and a new perspective on life. So today, I want to focus on that's the very thing Paul was going was trying to tell them. You have to change the way you think about things. You have to change your worldview and see them through the glasses of Scripture. You have to see them through the glasses of how God defines holiness instead of letting the world influence our thinking of what that looks like. So that's why this one in the introduction, you'll notice that it's all change. Change something. Every chapter is to change something. And that's what we want to do. We want to change our thinking and embrace that. Is everybody with me? Okay. So, because we're going to go through this pretty fast. In the introduction, the first thing is, I said, I call it renewing their minds. So we've got to think, just like he had to do in 1 Peter. I've got to present to you what is really true so that you'll see the lies that you're believing. And that's what he's going to do here. So let's just very quickly, and this is going to go chapter by chapter, and then we are going to be studying it chapter by chapter to reinforce those principles that he's working on right here. So, number one, the first thing they had to do in chapters 1 through 4 is, and you'll notice that it says chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and I'll break that down to identify this main concept in those chapters that he wants them to change. So number one, in chapters 1 through 4, first thing they have to do, in order for them to hear the rest of what he's going to be saying in the rest of the book, and it's the same thing we're going to have to do, because I'm telling you, the rest of the book is tough. There are some concepts where we're going to go, whoa, that is totally counterculture. I don't know if I can do that. I'm going to look like a freak if I do that. And we'll have a decision to make. What are we going to do with it? So it's not going to be easy. So number one, he had to change their estimation of human wisdom and reasoning. The reason this is true is because they lived in a time where intellect was the going thing. Philosophies, they would have new philosophers, these wise guys that we'll call them, that would come into town, and they would go to the main place where they did their forums. And this is the way the Corinthians lived constantly. They were into who's got the next great philosophy, who's got the next idea, who's got the next concept that's going to wow us as they give us their wisdom, and who it's like many of the old philosophers. That's what they were Roman philosophers. So they were very much into education, but it was secular. They were very much into intellect, but it was secular. They were very much into religion, but it was multi-secular. They had so many gods and goddesses that it was just a thorough part of their culture. So worship was not anything new to these people. This was the way of life. But it's just then, how do we understand life and mix it with all these gods that we have? So these philosophies were huge to them. And it was all human wisdom and thinking. And they thought it was real. So even as they lived in it, so there's, when you go into Corinth was known as for its filthiness, for its degradation. When I say filthiness, I don't mean dirty, I mean immoral. And as immoral as you can get, like disgustingly immoral. One of their main gods, which was Baal, you've heard of Baal before, was the god who endorsed child sacrifice. You want to please Baal and you want something from him, give your child as a sacrifice in the fire. Happened all the time. When you're in Corinth, you get used to seeing children being offered in the fire to Baal. The other thing they had was temples that were all over the place, and they had different women that were, well, I shouldn't say women, females, whatever they were, that were the goddesses of that time. And so, of course, when you have a female goddess, it almost always encouraged, and its main portion of it was orgies, constant. And it was, so you could walk down the street and there would be orgies going on in the temples where they were at. This was constant. And the prostitutes, to pull people into their temple, were lining the streets. Sometimes it was men and it was homosexuality that was going on. Rampant, everywhere. No, this was not shocking to anyone because this is the way it was done. This is just what they did. That's how degraded their society was. And this is what they had been involved in their whole life. Their whole life. So this is the way they saw things. And then, so you mix all of that immoral behavior with this human philosophies, and we know that Paul talks about that all the time, that that's kind of what we battle against. We battle against philosophies of this world. And that's what they were doing. But see, they grew up in that, so now they get saved, and now they're looking for the wisdom to come from all the different leaders, like Paul, like Apollos, like Peter, and so pretty soon, they're following one of them, trying to get them to impress them. And if, Paul comes and he speaks and he wasn't real impressive, he didn't really wow me, then I'm going to follow Apollos for a while, because he's the next best philosopher. And it was causing major divisions in their church, and you'll see that in chapter 1 when we do it. That was one of the first things that they dealt with. So Paul had to change in the way that he talked to them, their estimation of human wisdom. He had to get them to understand, yeah, there's some smart guys out there, but their wisdom is foolishness. And that's what he calls it over. The word foolishness is used in the first chapter over and over again. But see, these guys were this is what they had honored their whole life, was people who were smart. So how do we get them to understand that just because they sound smart doesn't mean they are? He had to get their thinking to be completely changed about the world's wisdom. That was his first thing. And their estimation of it. Because it was coming into the church and causing factions in the church because they were looking for the next great Christian philosopher now. Do we do that? Absolutely we do that. I mean, it depends on, a lot of times the person I really like is the one I read all the time. Or to the church I go to is because I like the pastor. Or I'm not going this week because that pastor is not speaking. Or whatever it is. We do that all the time. And it causes divisions is what it does. And that's the thing that Paul's going to have to deal with. So, in chapter 1, he speaks about the foolishness of the world. He really, really defines, it is amazing when in chapter 1, when Paul starts to show the difference between the two, it is absolutely, I don't even know the word. It's so simplistic. Once he says it, you go, well, duh. I didn't get that before, and I totally see now why that's so foolish. But because they had been immersed in it their whole life, it was going to take more than one chapter to convince them of that, to convince them before he could ever address all of the problems and the sin that was in their church and in their lives. He had to convince them that the world's ways are not the ways we want to do things, guys. I wonder if we as a church, how the church would change if we were convinced that the world's ways were not the ways to do things. How do you think that would change us? We're supposed to be foreigners here, right? Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be weird, even. Yeah, we are supposed to be to the world. We're supposed to be weird. We should be different. But I think, like the Corinthians, it's a little too comfortable. We blend in a little too well. And this is what we're going to learn. We're going to learn that from 1 Corinthians, because we're right there, guys. We're right there with them. Couldn't be more practical than I was telling Sheree that this morning that it's so interesting to me that we can do 1 and 2 Peter about how to suffer well in the world that rejects you, and then so easily switch to 1 Corinthians on how to not embrace the world and be loved by them. You'd think two flip sides of the coin. Are we there right now? Isn't that exactly the life we're living right now? We are somewhat rejected by the world, but yet we are embracing the world as well. This is so practical. This is so perfect. Okay, so the first thing, chapter 1, he had to convince him of the foolishness of the world. In verse 18, he says, for the word of the cross to those who are perishing is foolishness, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. That's what he's trying to convince them of. But see, they were blending it. They were blending it. Power of God. I was thinking about Blackbear. That phrase really got me. Okay, chapter 2, he says he wants them to understand and really realize the state of natural man. Chapter 2, verse 14 says, but a natural man does not accept the things of the Spirit of God. Why? Because they're foolishness to him. And this statement, he cannot understand them. He cannot. I was amazed at that statement. He cannot understand them because they are spiritually appraised. We should never expect an unbeliever to understand why we do what we do. Therefore, we should never expect an unbeliever to accept us or to blend in with them. We're going to be different than they are because they cannot accept the things of God. They can't. Neither could we before we got to this point. Before the Holy Spirit came in, we could not. It didn't make any sense. So, the natural man, he's telling them, the natural man cannot do this. Don't think you can follow worldly advisors that they're going to have any spiritual sense at all. They may talk like they do. They're going to talk about spiritual things, but it's the reality of the cross is foolishness to them. You're not going to get what you need from them. Chapter 3, it reveals their immature thinking because of these factions that are being created with them thinking that way. It says, I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, for you are not yet able to receive it. Indeed, even now you're not able, if you are still fleshly. For since there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not fleshly? And are you not walking like mere men? For when one says, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are you not mere men? He's making his point. Following human wisdom is foolishness, and it brings division in the church. We can't do both. So it's showing their immature thinking. They're thinking, as you'll see in 1 Corinthians, that they're strong. They're thinking they're really, because you know what they do? They're really big on spiritual gifts. And I'm just throwing this in here because we're going to study that chapter. Spiritual gifts, they express the spiritual gifts, so they think they're really spiritual. He's saying that you're like babies. I can't even give you meat because you are so immature. And they're thinking, man, we're smart. We have spiritual gifts. We're gifted. We got the church going. And he's like, it's kind of like Paul in Revelation when he tells them, you think that you're rich, but you are miserable, poor, blind, and naked, is what he tells them. That's the same kind of thing that the Corinthians were experiencing. Chapter 4, and it's because of the deception of pride. Chapter 4, verse 7. For who regards you as superior, and what do you have that you did not receive? But if you did receive it, why do you boast as if you had not received it? Why do you think you're smart? Why do you think you're all that? When really, you have, I used to tell my 6th graders, you think you're pretty? Girls, you think you're pretty cool because you're popular and you've got where did that come from? So if you are really smart, did you make yourself smart? No, you better go back and thank your mom and dad that they passed you genes that made you do that, and then they're going to thank God that he gave it to them to give to you. So we have nothing to brag about. Are you pretty? Did you make yourself pretty? I don't think so. So who do you think you are? Why are you all that? Because you're this and they're not. You received it. How in the world do you brag about it and use it against someone else? But it's not what we do. We do that. And he's saying the same thing to them. All right, so that was chapters 1 through 4, and we're going to be looking closely at those in the next 4 weeks. So the next one is in chapters 5 and 6. They need to change their definition of morality. As I said, these are people that have lived in degradation their whole life, and they think it's commonplace. They walk along the streets as little kids. You're seeing, they probably saw people engaged in sexual acts from the time they can even remember, because it was everywhere. It's what they did. It wasn't anything that was hidden at all. And they need to change their thinking about that. So in chapter 5, they need to see it seriously. This is what Paul says to them. We really need to think about this. He says, this is when he actually starts rebuking them for their behavior. The first 4 chapters is just getting them to think correctly. Chapter 5 is when he first starts with the second problem, which is immorality. It is actually reported that there is immorality among you, and immorality of such a kind as does not exist even among the Gentiles. Did you know that adultery was illegal in the Roman Empire? Yeah, and they were doing it. And he's like, the pagans don't even do this. That someone has his father's wife, that's considered to be incest. And you have become arrogant and have not mourned instead, in order that one who has done this deed might be removed from your midst. You have become arrogant and have not mourned. They didn't think twice about it. There should have been deeds. know that this was happening in the church. Paul's like, what are you thinking? You're looking at this like it's a good thing. You should be deep in mourning. Think about our church today, the kinds of things that are accepted in our church today that we just look at and go, oh.
Little Jesus.
That's right, that's right. He's saying sin should break our hearts. Because you see, as the body, we are all affected by it in a negative way. Every choice we make for those kinds of things affects the rest of the body. And he's saying you should be mourning. Not thinking you're great because you allow this or that you're... See, sometimes we do that. I'm going to say this, I hope I don't get in trouble. We as a church think that if we bring in pagans, then we're a really good church. Because see, we're ministering to the lost. Guys, I want you to think about this when you're reading what Paul says. This is a difficult place to understand. Yes, we want to minister to the lost. We want to minister to those that are broken. And those who really think that the gospel is foolishness, they need to see it. But if we let it come in and let them engage as though they're a part of who we are as the body, and it's going to talk about how sin is like leaven, and it leavens the whole dough. And he's going to give a warning. So Paul is not saying here we should not minister, because what did Paul do? Paul ministered to the lost too. But when he first gave the gospel, he always went to the synagogue, didn't he? So he's saying, don't bring them in and act like they're a part of your body. And then let the sin go, because we don't want to offend them. Because then it infiltrates the whole body. Can you see how that's actually happened?
Yes.
That's what's happened in the church. We've done it. So our question again is, how am I going to think about this? How am I going to respond to this? Because I'm telling you, this is counter-church culture, which is what Paul was saying to them. There's a price to pay for this. So they've got to see morality different. See sin seriously. And chapter 6, sacrifice on behalf of others. You know, when you are involved in accepting immorality and using one another for physical enjoyment, because really that's all they're doing. They're like what are the things? Leeches that go to each other because I want the pleasure of, so I'm going to use you for that purpose. Self-gratification, that's exactly what it is. And he is saying, you need to change your thinking. Instead of using those people for your benefit, you are here to benefit them. That's but see, their whole life they'd done that. That's what their whole life was involved in, was sucking life out of everybody else. Give me what makes me feel good. It doesn't matter the ramifications in Honey, because remember, sexual diseases were rampant, killing people back then. It doesn't matter, because I need to be gratified. That's why they did it. But in chapter 6, verse 7, Paul says to them, actually then, it is already a defeat for you that you have lawsuits with one another. Why not be wronged? Why not rather be defrauded? And we'll get into that whole process. But what he's saying is, you're better off to take it yourself and to give it out to somebody else and use somebody else for your own benefit. Be self-sacrificing. That's a new mindset for them. Totally new mindset. This is not the way they had been learned to live. And now they were bringing that to the church. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
this is not the way they've been learned to live. Not the way they've been taught to live. Yeah, I really was taught to talk too. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. Yes, because you're graceful. Okay, so and number 3, as soon as you start talking about sexual morality, then you've got to go to marriage. And that's what he does next. And that's why there's a lot of controversial chapters in here. And we're going to give grace to each other as we do them. And I'm going to try that when I do the lessons. It's tough to write these kind of lessons. So they have to change their understanding of marriage. Marriage to them was simply self-gratification, like everything else. It had nothing to do with giving yourself to someone else. It had what can we give to each other, and how can we benefit, how can I benefit from you? And they were thinking, how can I benefit? Wow, that sounds like marriage today. But chapter 7, he says, and that whole chapter is going to be on marriage. He says in verses 2 through 5, but because of immoralities, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband fulfill his duty to his wife, selflessness, and likewise also wife to her husband. And so here, they needed to understand that sex was pure. Sex should be pure, and it is pure in the marriage relationship. That's what he was trying to get across to them. You have seen it as it's a free-for-all. That's not the way God intended it, because it makes it impure.
In the United States of Corinth, it is.
Yes, exactly. You're right. United States of Corinth. That's good. Okay. Yeah, that's what she's saying. Turning out into Corinth. Number 4 is they need to change their expectation and practice of self-gratification. So he's going to go on to this. He's going to go on talking about you've learned to just self-gratify. You have to think differently now. You have to think about someone else besides you. So chapters 8 through 10, he's going to cover that. And in chapter 8, verses 10 through 12, he says, consider the broader effect. This is what he wants them to see. This isn't about you just getting what you want. There is a broader effect to what you do. And in the church, you need to consider that. So in verses 10 through 12, he says, for if someone sees you, who have knowledge, dining in an idol's temple, will not his conscience, if he is weak, be strengthened to eat things sacrificed to idol? For through your knowledge, he who is weak is ruined. The brother for you whose sake Christ died. And thus by sinning against the brethren and wounding their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food causes my brother to stumble, I will never eat meat again. That's what Paul is saying. I'm always looking out for what would cause somebody else to stumble. It doesn't mean that I don't have a right to do it. But my first priority is how's it going to affect somebody else? You know, when I was a teacher, I was just talking to somebody about this the other night. My sister gave her, the other day, I think it was Susan, my other sister, she gave me a list of rules for teachers I should have brought it in 1914. Wow, I don't think I'd have done well in 1914. Yeah. You couldn't even go in a carriage and sit next to a man that wasn't your brother or your father. You didn't do that. And so they don't even mention alcohol because they're assuming women didn't drink alcohol back then. But I was telling them that when I was a teacher, and we used to get, my father-in-law drank a lot of, my kids called it walkie beer. It was Milwaukee beer is what he drank. That's what he did. And, I mean, he's a total unbeliever. So sometimes my husband would for Father's Day, we would get him steaks and beer. And I'm like, I'm not buying beer. Because, see, one of my students saw me do that. They're going to relate that it's me. And I don't want them to stumble. I understand my position as their teacher. I will not do that. Even though I'm not even going to drink the beer, I like beer. That's not what they would think. So that's one of those things where, is it wrong for me to buy beer? No. I'm over 18, barely, but I'm over 18. Or 21, or whatever the drinking, I don't even know what the drinking age is anymore. But I won't do it because it could be a stumbling block to someone, or one of my students' parents even. So that's what he's saying. Consider the broader effect. There's more than just us. See, but that's what the Corinthians were into, self-gratification. Just get what you can from you and use whatever people you have to do it. This was a new way of thinking for them. And it has to be in the church as well. Paul is trying to teach them that. Chapter 9, the progress of the gospel is the highest priority. That's what you want to remember, is that our goal is to present the gospel to the world in such a way that they see Christ in everything we do. That's why he says, I won't cause another brother to stumble. And besides, I'm going to think about the world's effects to our thought process and what I do. What I do affects the world. So in chapter 9, 22 and 23, or do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? No, that's 10, sorry. To the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. And I do all things for the sake of the gospel, that I may become a fellow partaker of it. Just think how different the church would be if we all did everything for the sake of the gospel. Walking in truth to do that. As Paul said, it's not just, there's a bigger effect than just us. And that's what he has to teach them, because it's not their normal thought process. I'm concerned about this coming generation. Selfishness is become the norm. It's scary. It really is. I don't even go there. It just freaks me out when I think
It's
about it.
almost one step more than selfishness. But you know what I mean?
It absolutely
It's an all-consuming.
It is. I have to get what I want. I should. Not just I have to, I should get what I
And it
want.
doesn't matter what you want. You owe it to me. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's where the Corinthians lived, because they learned that their whole life. So we're really presenting a Corinthian lifestyle to our children. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so chapter 10, seek spiritual growth in others. Our desire is that others will grow spiritually, so therefore what we do is important with how they see things. Paul says, all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but not all things edify. That means not all things build other people up. Let no one seek his own, but that of his neighbor. You wouldn't think you'd have to teach adult people that in the church, would you? That's what he's trying to tell them. You have lived your lives for yourself and your whole life. It can't come into the church that way. It just can't. It's going to corrupt the church. This is not the way God does things. It's a whole different thinking. It's a transformation of your mind.
This has come into our church under the guise of grace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to go there. She's absolutely right. Think about that. We put everything and allow anything now under the guise of grace. In fact, I just heard the other day Brandy's coming, here we go. That means I'm behind. That somebody said they approached a person who was she was in a Bible study, and she was living with a boyfriend. So one of the women who was kind of mentoring her approached her and said, you really don't want to do this. This isn't the way the guy. She's like, you can't judge me. I'm under grace. That was her answer. Christ is good with this. What she said, God is good with what I'm doing because I'm under grace. That is rampant in the church because we misunderstand who God is. That's a whole other time. All right, we got to hurry because she'll take a few more steps here soon. The next swing in chapter 11, then we have to, because of these mindsets, we have to change the way, not just in our marriages and in our lifestyles with each other, we have to change the way we do church. And the way we worship is what he's telling. So then the next chapter is chapter 11, is about women's roles in the church, how that's supposed to look, and the communion meal, because their communion meal was like a free-for-all. It had nothing to do with worship. It was just food, because remember, food to them is just for self-gratification, and so is everything else. So he's changing the way they're doing that. Chapter 12, spiritual gifts. They were bragging because their gifts were so great, and he's saying they're for the common good. They're not just for you. They're not for you at all. They're for you to exercise for the good of the body. Which verse 7 in chapter 12 says, but to each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit, who's at 11. Notice well. For the common good. For one is given a word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge, and we all come together, and that's what it's for, is for the common good. Well, they're used to just being self-indulgent, and they're used to going off of these, whoever's the smartest and can show the greatest gift. And he's trying to change their thinking about that. That's not what it's for. And all of this we'll get more into intensively as we get into those chapters themselves. Chapter 13, that's when he gives the love chapter. The one that we use it for marriage all the time, which works fine for marriage, but that's not why he gave it. He gave it because all of their self-indulgent behavior lacked the very one thing that even gave it any sense of spirituality, and that is love. That's why he's saying, you know what? You can be the smartest person. You can speak in tongues of angels and show that you're great, but if you don't have love, that's nothing. That's like a clanging cymbal. That's why he's telling them that. It's in response to them using and abusing spiritual gifts to show how great they are instead of for the common good. Selfishness was rampant. So, love as a foundation for all in verse 13. And verse 14, the priority of edification over experience. We want to build each other up. We're not each trying to get our own experience. It's not about how can we enjoy the experience. It's about how can we build others up. And he says, verse 26, what is the outcome then, brethren, when you assemble? Each one has a psalm or has a teaching or has a revelation, has a tongue, has an interpretation. Let all things be done for edification. So that's part of the reason I think that this church, and this is not to offend, because I think tongues is a real gift, but some people get offended because they don't want it and they don't want you to do it at church. But that's because it won't edify if you're doing your own little thing, standing amongst 300 people, and nobody has a word what you're saying. All that's doing is trying to show that you're spiritual. Do you get what I'm saying? Now, I don't believe this church is saying it's not real. They're just saying this isn't the place to do it because it's supposed to be done for edification. So that's exactly what Paul was saying. Then next, in chapter 15, they needed to change their perspective of the doctrine of resurrection. That's what the Sadducee teaching. The resurrection did not really happen. And they were believing this. This is what was rampant in there. The problem with that is without the resurrection, our faith is in vain. And Paul says that if Christ did not rise, then neither are we going to, and we're in trouble. Because all that we're doing is useless anyway. Because this is all for the hope of the resurrection of the dead. In fact, when Paul was arrested and he's speaking before, I can't remember who it was, one of the main Roman guys, he said that, I am here because of my hope in the resurrection. That's why these Sadducees wanted to arrest me, because I'm teaching that there is a resurrection. And the Sadducees were trying to kill him because of it. So the Corinthians were falling for that lie. And without the resurrection, we've got nothing. And then again, the last chapter, he does it again. Let love rule above all. Chapter 16, verse 14. Let all that you do be done in love. He increases that again, the reality of that. Do you see the mindset that has to be changed? Do you see the secular thinking that can ingrain their responses to life and has ingrained ours? We are the problems, whether we know it or not. Just like we were the people in 1 Peter that we're trying to figure out how do we respond to a culture that hates us. On the other hand of that, how do we respond in a culture that we happen to feel pretty comfortable and do it right? That's what's going on in 1 Corinthians. And I pray by the time we're done, we're going to see this whole thing differently. And it's going to be difficult, guys. This is a difficult perspective to have our minds renewed to spiritual thinking in a secular world. And that's what's going to happen. Let's pray. Father in heaven, your word is a delight. And that does not mean that it is not difficult sometimes or that it doesn't grate against our flesh. It totally does. But if all of us here with Tina prayed that prayer that we want to be like you, we want to know you, we want to represent you well, we want to walk in holiness, then these kinds of things are absolutely necessary for that to happen. So I pray, Father, that you will renew our minds, transform us, help us to let go of the lies that we have believed and the philosophies that we have followed and the vain behaviors that we have taken a part of and become what you would have us. Help us to trust you that those things are right. They may be counterculture, but that's part of what makes them right. Help us to have the strength to walk that way. Not to judge others because they don't. That's not our goal here. Our goal is to change us, to let you change us, so that we reflect you better. Thank you for this privilege. Thank you that your word is powerful and active and a double-edged sword. And it will change us if we will embrace it, if we will walk in it, if we will consistently let it renew our minds. Thank you for this privilege. In Jesus' name.